welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today's subject, we're going to be going over understanding in WoW. Now, there's a lot of things that you have to understand in World of Warcraft, but the ones that I'm going to be looking at are, well, one's very specific because it's something that I've come across quite often recently, and the other are spell interactions. The one that I have come across quite often I will get to in a second, but as always we have the weekly news for you. The world bosses for this week are Mortanis, Morgeth and Antros. The fated raids for this week is Antros and the fated raid is Sepulchre of the first ones. So make sure you head on in there, get your Anima, get your conduits, and stuff like that. And get your gear from there. The event for this week is Missa Pantaria Time Walking. So anything that you have Timeless badges wise, you can purchase stuff from the Timeless Isle to potentially get a mount and other toys, companions, stuff like that. The brawl for this week is the Temple of Hot Mogu. It's a 6v6 battleground, and essentially there's two orbs and you can throw them to each other. It's kind of like hot potato, stuff like that. The mythic affixes for this week are Tyrannical, Bolstering, Explosive and Shrouded. Tyrannical, the bosses and the mobs that they summon have increased health and damage. Bolstering, whenever a mob dies, it will yell out a scream and increase the damage of enemies, increases their damage and health, Explosive, these are little balls, fiery balls on the floor. You want to kill them, they're very, very low HP, they are one shot essentially. Make sure these are killed. If you cannot kill them in time, make sure your line of sighting, because if they are to detonate, they will hurt very much so. And finally, we have Shrouded. Shrouded being the seasonal affix, and there are Nathrazim hidden amongst all of the mobs in the dungeon. You kill them to gain a stat, and this stat you can is the one that you have the highest of, I believe. So it's very useful, and it stacks up 2% each time. You can get about 10% extra to 20%, something like that. The ability that we're going to look at the history of this week is Ghost Wolf. Now, Ghost Wolf is a shaman ability. It's for all specializations, and it was introduced in patch 0.7. 0.7. That's before WoW even started. So 0.7 was back in 2004, in June of 2004. It was moved to level 20, and the mana cost was increased. It got its next change it 2 months later in a patch test as well, at patch 0.9. Now considered a beast when using Ghost Wolf, which makes sense. It got its last change in the beta in patch 0.12 in October of 2004. Now only usable outdoors. So what was weird, they actually had it indoors as well, which is that's insane, because they only transitioned to that like relatively later on in the expansions, that you can use like Travel Form Ghost Wolf indoors compared to just in the outdoor world. Kind of like Entangling Roots wasn't been able to use in the indoor world as well. It got its first change in actual World of Warcraft when it was released in 2005, so a year later. It will now correctly have its cast time reduced by Nature's Swiftness. You can Nature's Swiftness Ghost Wolf. That is very niche. We'll say that. Very, very niche. And then it got its first... Actually, I'm looking at it. It only got one change each expansion, which is really rare. So it got its change in Burning Crusade, late Burning Crusade, nearly 3 years later. Its base cast time is reduced to 2 seconds, down from 3 seconds. Okay, not bad. It kind of makes sense because Druids at the time had Travel Form as well, and Travel Form is just a better version of Ghost Wolf because it's instant cast, so kind of makes sense that they bring that more in line with the Druid Travel Form. In Wrath, a year or so later, can now be learned at level 16. While in this form, snaring effects may not bring the shaman below base normal run speed, and this has been a staple point throughout the entirety of it. You cannot be reduced below 100% of your normal movement speed, which is very, very good. The change in Cataclysm saw the speed buffer reduced to 30%, down from 40%. Can now be learned at level 15 and now usable indoors. So it's a tiny nerf to it in terms of the run speed, but very good, very good. That you could get it at level 15, because obviously it used to be level 16. Very weird to just go down the extra level, but it's nice to have it for the extra level because obviously you get your mount at level 20, so it's not necessarily needed for that long. The change in Mists of Pandaria came in 2012. Cast time removed, so it is now baseline 0 seconds. No longer causes the shaman to be less hindered by effects that would reduce movement speed. Very simple change, but very effective. And the only change in Warlords of Draenor was the wolf model was updated, and the only change in Legion in 2016 was the base movement speed, or now prevents movement speed from being reduced below 100% while active. And the Glyph of Spirit Wolf's effect is now baseline. This means that you can cast Spirit Wolf while you are dead, which kind of makes sense. Spirit Wolf, so you can, like, you are a spirit when you're dead, so it makes sense. Yeah, it's not a crazy change, Spirit Wolf, over the years. It's quite nice to see the test things from before WoW was even released. That's always nice to see, that it can keep track of this stuff like very far back. But Spirit Wolf is something that's obviously a staple point within the Shaman class, and it's not changed that much, but it's changed very nichely throughout the entirety of its history. So, let's go on to the main topic, understanding in WoW. Now, what do you need to understand? You have your spells, and you press them to do damage. You press them to do healing. You target a mob and you attack it. Yes, that's kind of the bare bones of it, but there are spell interactions in the game that not a lot of people know about, and a lot of new players who are looking to get into WoW might actually not necessarily pick up for a long, long time, because these spell interactions are something that you pick up later on in your World of Warcraft career, or not career, but lifespan, due to the fact that not everyone plays every class. Everyone plays just one specific class, and you need to be in certain situations to actually know these spell interactions and stuff. So I'm going to start off with something simple. You have Devour and Plague in retail, and Unstable Affliction in both retail and classic. Now, Unstable Affliction, when it is dispelled, will silence you for a set amount of time and do a lot of damage to you. This is to prevent healers dispelling all of the dots from warlocks. It's to prevent them from just spam clicking dispel, essentially. In classic, it is, and it kept that part of its spell kit, I would say, into retail when dispel became a 8-second cooldown for every healer. A lot of people go through a lot of people pick up healing and think, oh, dispel, I need to use this on everything that's a magic ability, so they just spam it every time they see, and there's no thought to it. But with the introduction of Unstable Affliction and Devour and Plague will horrify the target for a few seconds once it is dispelled. So with these introductions, it gave healers a bit more of you had to think about it. Now, in retail, I can give examples here. There's Affliction Warlocks that pump absolutely loads of damage, And sometimes healers have to make a choice. They take a bit of or a load of damage immediately and get silence for a certain amount of time, or they just let the dots tick and have to heal through it. Now, it's a very tough choice because Unstable Affliction hits hard. Like, we were doing arenas, I think about a couple weeks ago, something like that. A week or two ago, actually. We're not necessarily the most geared, but we're still geared. We're high sort of Season 3 geared, or max Season 3 geared, into Season 4 geared, and, a couple pieces there. About 285 item level in PvP. Max versatility, all that. My healer, essentially we're against a warlock, gets one shot. And the reason he gets one shot, he was about 70%. The reason he gets one shot is he dispelled Unstable Affliction. Now, he is a very good healer, but essentially what happened is you have to make that calculated decision with Unstable Affliction, and this is what I mean by spell interactions. People need to understand that there are consequences to dispelling this debuff, and another spell interaction that people don't necessarily understand or know is Master Spell. Master Spell, you might think, oh, okay, it's just a PvE ability, like, there's no use of using that in PvP, it costs way too much mana and doesn't do anything, it will get rid of one thing or something. Well, yeah, but that one thing is an immunity. So the only thing that can get rid of Ice Block, Paladin Bubble, is either a Master Spell or a Shattering Throw. Shattering Throw being a warrior ability that's on like a 5-minute cooldown. The Mass Dispel, however, is on a potential 30-second cooldown with like a talent. 45 seconds baseline, I think. I think it's about that. And yeah, a lot of people don't understand this. A load of people will play Priest and not even care about the ability. They won't even have it on their action bar because it's useless, quote unquote. I've actually had someone come up to me and say it is a useless ability, and it's like, what? It's a very powerful ability if you know how to utilize it in any sort of circumstance. Like, there are raid boss mechanics that you literally use it in. Zulaman being the latest one for Classic, or yeah, the latest that I can remember. It's when the last boss, Zul'jin, is a bear and he puts a dot on everyone, and after a few seconds this dot will stun everyone for about 5 seconds. That's huge. Everyone had to group up and you had to get a priest to Master Spell. So it has its uses. In PvP, some of the clutchest things that you can do is Master Spell. Either a Hammer of Justice on your healer, a Cyclone on your healer, which is undispellable by anything else in the game, by the way. It literally cannot be dispelled by anything. It can't have anything target it, stop it, whatever. Only Master Spell will get your healer out of a Cyclone. Or you Master Spell, say, to go offensive against a Paladin Bubble and Mage's Ice Block. I've seen loads of clips where people pre-Master Spell a Paladin Bubble. I've done it myself on my Priest. I've done it within like 0.1 seconds of actually like the Paladin pressing a bubble or the Mage pressing his Ice Block. And that means that they're completely open to kill because there's no downtime on this target whatsoever. Because they're thinking, oh, I'll just Ice Block. I've got at least a few seconds before the priest Master Spells. But no, I've already pressed it. I'm done. I've done my job immediately. You have now no defensive. You've not been able to recover any time for your team. You are screwed. You need to pull something. You need to pull the rabbit out of the hat to save yourself here. So ultimately, Master Spell is very powerful, and it is one of the spell interaction that you can have with it is very, very good. But a lot of people do not realize and utilize this in any way whatsoever. Now, another one that a lot of these are priests, actually. I've just noticed priest can dispel, priest can Master Spell. The next one is Grip, Death Knight's Grip, and this is very much retail. You can use it to stop any form of quick transportation. So one that I would generally go back to, like, you kind of think, oh yeah, Death Grip, obviously it's going to stop transportation, it's going to grip them back, it's ridiculous. But There's a priest PvP talent called Ascension. I'm pretty sure it's called Ascension. Where they just jolt really high up into the air and float down slowly. Now, if you time this to perfection, you can, as they start their ascent, drag them back down to earth, almost like slamming them into the ground, like, yeah, no, you're not going anywhere, son. And it's one of the biggest detriments of a holy priest to have your ascension, like, cut out, essentially, be nullified. Because usually when you run Ascension is when you have melees on you, like a melee cleave arena team. So it's a warrior and a death knight just, throwing axes at you, chopping you up. You want to get away from them for a bit just to reset your cooldowns and heal yourself back up. So you jump up into the air, but nope, death knight, get back down here, slams you into the ground. It's a very weird interaction because you can do this with most things, but the timing has to be perfect, and grip is one of the easier ones. So you can do this with Cyclone for a druid, I found out. I have done this in the past unknowingly, or not unknowingly, because I wanted to Cyclone the priest at low health, because I knew that he was going to use a big cooldown. He had Guardian Spirit up or something, so he was going to heal himself big. So I Cycloned him, and as the Cyclone went off, he used his Ascension, flung up into the air, and usually they slowly drift back down. But because he's Cycloned, he just plummets to the ground. He takes no damage, obviously, because he's in a Cyclone, but he just plummets to the ground and is there. The Ascension was nullified by a Cyclone. So I imagine you can do stuff like this as well with potentially Nova, like Frost Nova, or a cheap shot for a rogue, or any form of CC, which is absolutely insane. It's very tough to get the timing for it, but these are interactions that a lot of people don't know. People just think, oh, he's just going to fly away and I can't do anything about it. No, you can, but it's got to be good timing. You've got to be on the ball with it, essentially. These are a few of the spell interactions. Obviously, some are more impactful than others, such as Unstable Affliction and Master Spell, but a lot of these small interactions, a lot of people don't actually understand. There's probably some that you've come across that thought, wait, what? There's no way that has that effect on someone. Like in Classic, now obviously rogues have blind, don't they? Every rogue has blind. It's a 1 to 2 minute cooldown. I'm pretty sure it's 2, but essentially they blind someone for 8 seconds. I think it was 10 seconds in Classic. But in Classic, blind was classed as a poison. Now, this is really important because a poison can be dispelled by certain classes, mainly a druid. So what a druid would do in a PvP situation in Warsong Gulch is pre-abolish poison himself, so that when the rogue does press blind, your abolish poison would tick and dispel the blind. And I've done this once or twice back in Classic, Vanilla Classic, and it was a very satisfying spell interaction that I had to pull off. And when you did, it was absolutely incredible. You couldn't do much more to it. The rogue couldn't do anything about it, because you had abolished poison. All he could do was wait out the abolished poison. But if you kept reapplying it, it's very tough for him to find that window of opportunity. The only time that you're applying abolished poison is when you're vulnerable. So he kind of has to make a chess move of, oh, you're going to put abolished poison back on. I'm going to kidney you when you're outside of bear form, stuff like that. It's kind of a chess move. But there are these small interactions, these spell interactions, that heighten the game up so much more, or they elevate it to a new level, essentially. This is why pros are so good in both PvE and PvP, because they know exactly how everything works. They'll do everything perfectly. This is why diminishing returns are something in a game, because if you obviously had 3 rogues, they would just stun off cooldown and that person would never get to play the game. That's why diminishing returns are a thing in a game, because these spell interactions would obviously be taken advantage of if they weren't there. It's something that you just pick up over time in World of Warcraft. They're very small niche interactions. Like with, again, I can provide another example, Starfall. Starfall in Classic, in Wrath Classic, I didn't know that it has a area of effect. I thought it was just a star falling onto one mob. That was it. Obviously, multiple mobs if there's multiple mobs. But no, it actually has a splash. So if a mob is within 8 yards of the star or of the mob that it hit, that mob will still take splash damage. I didn't know that. I had no idea. So I've gone into dungeons wanting so many things to be grouped up that I can just go absolutely crazy with Starfall. It's absolutely unreal. But yeah, so many small interactions, and there's way too many to like list off here. But the understanding, the hidden one that I wanted to go on to and discuss was prices of items in WoW. Now, there are many different factors to a price in World of Warcraft, or to selling items in WoW. The materials that it costs, mainly, the work that you put in, the longevity of how long it takes to create something. And this is usually the biggest thing. I've lost my words. The mounts are what usually have a fixed price. Now, mounts in World of Warcraft are very much, again, some professions, some are collectibles, stuff like that. But in Wrath of the Lich King, you have your very first multiple-seater mounts with the Mammoth, which costs, I think, about 18k if you're Exalted. You can buy one for like 8k with the Sons of Hordir. And you have the Mechanirs Chopper, which is made from engineering, which is a 2-seater mount. Now, I've sold a couple of these choppers in World of Warcraft, Wrath at the moment. They cost, they take 12 days from grinding yourself, by the way, 12 days to make, due to you having to smelt a specific bar called Titan Steel, and it's got a daily lockout or 20-hour lockout. And then you have a couple other sort of bits and pieces. You have some cobalt bolts and Arctic fur. Okay, that's very cheap. That's fine. The bars themselves, at the moment on my server, they're going for about 130 each, and you need 12. So it's about 1,500. Yeah, 1,500 gold. Something like that. Essentially, you'd think, oh, okay, that's not too bad for a mount. Like 2,000 gold. I'm currently, to put it into perspective, 21k gold on Wrath Classic. And I don't play it all that much, I'm not going to lie. I'm at 21k gold, but I make gold very well. I like making gold. It's a very chilled time for me, essentially, when I do that. 2k, not too bad for a mount. Until you look up the other 3 materials that you need. You need a piston, you need a couple other things, I forget their names. But essentially you need 8 pistons, you need 1 of something, goblin salvaged parts or something like that, and something else, an exhaust, pretty sure it is. So the salvage parts, 3,000 gold, just for 1. Okay, that's fine. Brings up to 5,000 gold. You have the exhaust, 1,500 gold. Okay, not bad. Okay, you know what? I'm trying to do the maths in my head here. The salvage part is 3,000 gold its own. The piston, no, not the piston. The exhaust, 1,500. 4,500 there. Okay, not too bad still. 8 pistons, 1,000 gold each, 8,000 gold. Okay, so we're up to 12,500 gold. Great. Plus the Titan Steel, plus the days making. You know, you're looking at 14k, and that's a bare minimum. You'll probably lose profit from actually selling it at 14k. So, because these 3 items, the exhaust, the parts, and the pistons, can only be bought from a vendor. They cannot be made at all. They cannot be made in any way. They can be salvaged from a raid, but the raid is not out yet. So there's a bit more money that you can make from that part. But essentially, you're looking for 12.5k minimum. This is if you get given all of the materials, because you still have to buy the vendor mats to make this chopper. So what would a reasonable price be to sell this chopper for? 14k, you're losing. You're losing gold. 15k, you make barely any profit. 16k, decent. 17k, yep, good. 18, yeah, good. Okay, so I'm looking to sell a chopper. Choppers are very tough to sell. Any mount is tough to sell, in my opinion, because you have to look for a very specific buyer who is a collector or has the gold to even buy it in the first place. You know, you're looking for a very specific person, essentially, and it can take a lot of time. Now, I don't post this on the auction house, mainly because the auction house takes a cut, and if you're selling it for 15k, the auction house will take a cut of, I think, like 5%, something like that. I can't remember. But essentially, you don't make any profit on it if it goes onto the auction house. So I'm selling it for about 15k, and I'm putting in trade chat, want to sell Mechanist Chopper, 15k, great price, or amazing price. I get loads of whispers, or I say loads of whispers. You get whispers constantly throughout whenever you post this. You know, you might get a couple a minute, you might get none for 5 minutes, you might get 3 immediately, you know, whatever. But I've had so many people. Now, this is the point that I'm trying to get here. The understanding of the game lacks in a lot of people who don't understand it. That sounds very stupid to say, but they don't think things through. There must be a reason that this is 15k, but no, the reason, like, he's selling it for so much is just because he wants a shit ton of profit, because this chopper only sells for about, or you can make it for about 2,000 gold, because all you need is 12 bars, right? Like, people don't understand where the materials come from, and the fact that 3 items out of 6 items are a set price, they cannot be changed at all. You will never get a chopper below 14k in the game. If you do, then the cost of Titan steel bars on your server is extremely low. I will say that. But it's ludicrous to think that people would message me and ask about the price and then say, that's a shit price. Like, that, and then go into the fact of explaining why it's a shit price. Because I ask, okay, why do you think that's an awful price? And they're like, well, you need 12 Titan steel bars, 40 cobalt bolts, and 2 Arctic fur. That's about 2,000 gold. Like, that's a rip-off. And it's like, okay, but you haven't taken into account half of the materials to make it. And that half of the materials is what pushes the price up. They just don't understand what makes it. And when I literally am at the point where I have a macro explaining what makes the chopper and the current prices of everything, and that's why I sell it. I need 2 macros in order to explain this, because I've had to explain it so many times to, like, so many people. It's unreal. People lack understanding of the game and understanding of what goes into making items, because it isn't just simple as, oh, you need 12 bars. That's easy to make. Just go farm for about 20 minutes. Like, go hit some minerals in, like, Dragonblight or, you know, Wintergrasp. But no, it's not that simple. It's a lot more in-depth, and you don't understand that. It's like the Sky Golem in Mr. Pandaria as well. People probably complained, like, that was overpriced, but again, it needed the items that you need to make the chopper. You need the pistons, you need the exhaust, you need everything like that. So at the very least, it's going to cost 12.5k again. People lack understanding in WoW, And I get if you're new to the game, you don't necessarily understand and you're like, oh, and you're just curious and it's like, oh, why does it cost that much? And then, but for sure, I'll explain. I'll be like, oh, it's because these parts cost 12.5k. The bars take a day to make each, so 12 days in total, and they cost around 130 gold. It's very simple. And they'll be like, oh, okay, that's fair enough then. But I have so many people, I've had so many people, they must be trolling at this point, but basically say, no, that's a rip-off. It should be like, I swear to God, I had some dude try and haggle me down to 12k. 12k. At that point, I'm basically buying the mats for him and giving him gold. How does that make any sense? In what logical world am I going to say, you know what? That's the best deal that I'm ever going to see. Yeah, I'm taking that. In what world am I ever going to say that to him? That is absolutely ludicrous, and people need to understand what goes into the game and what goes into making items, you know, like spell interactions and stuff. A lot of people have a different understanding of the game, and how deep of an understanding you have to the game is completely different to someone else's. So if you're not sure about why it costs that much, or why this spell has a weird interaction with that, or whatever, you can ask people and people will be like willing to tell you. But don't ever just be like most of the people that I've come across in the game and be like, well, that's really overpriced, that's stupid, because clearly you only need 12 Titan steel bars to make it. And it's like, no, I literally linked you what you need to make it. You can see it on any Google search if you type in Mechaniz chopper. Like, it will show you what you need. It will show you what reputation you need, how much the recipe itself costs, absolutely everything. People need to understand the game. And it takes a lot of time. It really does. In my, how long now, 14 odd years playing WoW, I've learned a lot about the game. I've learned a lot, and a lot of it is ingrained within my mind. I could recite to you a lot of stuff just off by heart if you ask me a question about WoW, but there's obviously stuff that I don't know still. Raiding stuff mostly, I would say. But you need to just understand that people are selling it for a set price, and if you do not understand why, ask them, rather than saying, that's stupid, that's a stupid price. I clearly would do better at selling this. And it's like, yeah, you'd sell it, but you'd lose gold. And the whole point of selling it is to make gold. So I don't know. I'm just ranting at this point at these people that I've come across trying to sell a chopper, to be honest. But that is all for this week. Thank you all very much for listening. As always, be sure to check out the Patreon for ad-free content, as well as Twitch and YouTube, constant stuff happening over there. Thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.